What happens when a TSA agent, drunk on his own small power, pushes a passenger too far? In the cold, fluorescent light of JFK Airport, Agent Markowski thought he was just putting another, difficult passenger in her place. He saw a black woman in a hoodie and decided she was nothing. With a sneer, he grabbed her simple tote bag and threw it. A gasp, a crash, and then the words that stopped the entire security checkpoint cold. That was a $2 million prototype. This isn't just a story about an airport blunder. It's a story of prejudice, catastrophic consequences, and the kind of hard, ice-cold karma that changes lives forever. The 4 a.m. alarm was of violence. Dr. Evelyn Reed knew it, felt it in the granular itch of her eyelids, but she had silenced it with the practiced speed of a surgeon. Now, at 5:15 a.m., she stood in the snaking, endless security line at JFK International, Terminal 4. The air was a familiar airport cocktail: stale coffee, industrial cleaner, and the faint, anxious sweat of thousands of strangers. Evelyn was not a stranger to this. As the founder and CEO of Innovatech Dynamics, she lived in a state of perpetual motion. But this trip was different. This wasn't a routine check-in with her investors in Austin or a quick jaunt to the Boston lab. This was the Global Innovators Summit in San Francisco. This was the presentation that would either rocket her company into the stratosphere or see it disintegrate into a cautionary tale told over expensive lunches in Silicon Valley. She adjusted the strap of her tote bag. To anyone else, it was a simple, elegant but unremarkable black leather bag. But inside, nestled in a custom-molded foam insert, was a small, unassuming hard case. And inside that case, suspended in a shimmering, temperature-controlled biometric gel, was the Synapse core. It was her life's work, a processor that didn't use silicon but synthesized neural pathways. It was a bridge between artificial intelligence and biological systems, a device that could, in her lifetime, allow a paralyzed person to walk or a blind person to see. It was also, in its current, singular, hand-built iteration, insured for $2 million. The cost of the rare earth biologics, the quantum-entangled emitters, and the 28,000 hours of specialized labor it had taken to build. She looked like a graduate student. Faded Stanford engineering hoodie, comfortable jeans, glasses, and her hair pulled back in a simple functional bun. She deliberately dressed down for air travel, prioritizing comfort over the sharp blazers and ironed steel demeanor she wore in the boardroom. This, she knew, was a calculated risk. In her world, perception was reality. But at 5 a.m., comfort was king. The line shuffled forward. A baby cried. A man in a suit argued loudly into his phone about logistics. And at the front of the line, a voice cut through the murmur, sharp and abrasive. "Bins on the belt! Laptops out! Shoes off! Let's go, people! I haven't got all day!" Evelyn winced. She recognized the type. Every airport had one. The little tyrant of the checkpoint, the one who wielded their laminated badge like a scepter. She got closer. The agent was a man in his late 40s, thick-necked, with a sour, downturned mouth and a crew cut that was more of a surrender than a style. His name tag, pinned crookedly to his blue shirt, read M. Kowski. Agent Mark Kowski hated 5 a.m. He hated the smell of the coffee, he hated the entitled businessmen in their rumpled suits, and he hated the endless, stupid river of people who couldn't seem to follow simple instructions. 20 years with the Transportation Security Administration. He'd joined after 9/11, thinking he'd be on the front line, a protector. Now, he was a glorified baggage handler, telling people to take off their belts. His life was a series of petty frustrations, medical bills for his son's asthma, and a mortgage that felt like a noose. Every passenger, to him, was just another person with a better life, complaining about a problem he'd love to have. He watched Evelyn approach. He scanned her in a half-second. Hoodie, jeans, plain bag, 0. She wasn't important. She was just another slowdown. "Bin's flat, Mum," he barked, pointing. "Not sideways, flat." Evelyn said nothing, just corrected the bin. She placed her laptop in one. Her roller bag went up, her shoes and jacket in another. Then she took her tote bag and gently, carefully, placed it in its own empty bin. She started to push it toward the X-ray tunnel. Kowski slapped his hand down on the belt, stopping it. "Consolidate. Consolidate your items. You see this line? Put the bag in with your jacket. One bin." "Excuse me," Evelyn said, her voice quiet but firm. "This bag needs to go separately. It contains highly sensitive equipment." Kowski's eyes narrowed. He looked at her, really looked at her, and his internal calculus of bias clicked into place. He saw her face, her hoodie, and his lip curled into a sneer he didn't even know he was making. "Sensitive equipment," he said, his voice loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "What's in there, lady? Your sensitive makeup? Your hair products?" Evelyn felt a hot flush of anger, but she bit it down. Ice. She needed ice. "Sir, it is fragile. I'm asking you to please just let it go through in its own bin. And I'm telling you to follow instructions," Kowski snapped her. He grabbed the tote from her bin and, with a rough, dismissive gesture, dumped it into the bin with her sneakers and jacket. "Move along, next." Evelyn's jaw tightened. She had no choice. She walked through the metal detector. It beeped. Of course it did. "Mum, step aside. Arms out." She was patted down by a female agent, a cursory bored check. As she waited, she watched her bins emerge from the X-ray tunnel, her laptop, her roller bag, and then the bin with her jacket and the tote. It was flagged. A red light flashed, and the bin was automatically shunted to the secondary screening table. Agent Kowski saw it. A little smile of vindication touched his lips. "See? Sensitive equipment. Got a problem. Over here, ma'am." He sauntered over to the stainless steel table, the monarch of his tiny, miserable kingdom. Evelyn followed, her heart suddenly beating a cold, heavy rhythm against her ribs. "This is going to be a bag check," Kowski declared, pulling on a pair of latex gloves with a loud snap. "Agent," Evelyn said, stepping forward, "I have documentation for that item. It is a medical-grade prototype. It cannot be opened or handled improperly. I need to be the one to open the case, if you require it." Kowski held up a hand. "You don't tell me how to do my job. You step back behind the line. Now." He looked at her, a bully who had just found his target. Or do we have a problem with that, too? The area around the secondary screening table felt like a stage. The shuffling of the main line faded into a dull roar, and the focus of everyone nearby, the bored, the annoyed, the curious, zoomed in on Evelyn and Agent Kowski. Kowski loved this part, the audience, the moment where he held all the cards. He upended the bin, dumping Evelyn's jacket, her sneakers and the tote bag onto the steel table. He picked up the tote and, with no care at all, rooted inside it. "Agent, please!" Evelyn tried again, her voice strained. "You don't understand. That equipment it's calibrated. The internal casing must remain sealed unless Ma'am, if you interfere with a federal screening process again, I will have you detained," Kowski said, not even looking at her. His eyes were fixed on the black, hard case he'd just pulled from her bag. It was a Pelican-style case, but sleeker, with no brand name. It had 2 complex-looking latches. Kowski examined it. "What is this?" A camera. You got to declare lithium batteries, you know. It is not a camera, Evelyn said, gripping the edge of the rolling table. It's a biotech processor. I have the customs manifest and the insurance declaration right here. She reached for her roller bag, where her document portfolio was. Stop reaching, Kowski barked. Hands where I can see 'em. He turned his attention back to the case. He fumbled with the first latch. It was a pressure release clasp, and he was just yanking at it. Sir, that's a pressure latch. You have to lift the center pin first, Evelyn said, trying to be helpful, trying to de-escalate. Kowski's face flushed a dull, angry red. He felt her words as a public correction, an embarrassment. This woman in her college hoodie was telling him how to open a box. I know how a damn latch works, he snarled. He put his thumb on it and pushed, hard. The high-impact polymer groaned but didn't budge. He was trying to force it the wrong way. You're going to break it, Evelyn whispered, a genuine note of panic entering her voice. Please, just let me show you. Step back, Kowski shouted. The entire checkpoint went quiet. Even the other agents paused. He was furious now. This case, this woman, had made him look stupid. He grabbed the case, positioning it on the edge of the table. He set his jaw. He was going to open this thing, and he was going to find a bottle of shampoo that was 6 Oz instead of 3, and he was going to throw it in the trash with a triumphant smile. He put all his weight on the latch. With a sharp crack, the plastic hinge of the latch itself, not the seal, snapped. A small piece of black polymer skittered across the steel table. Kowski froze. He looked at the broken piece. He looked at Evelyn. Evelyn's face was white. You've broken the seal. It's just a piece of plastic, Kowski stammered, his bravado instantly evaporating, replaced by a sullen defensiveness. It's a cheap case. Now open it. I can't, Evelyn said, her voice trembling. You've compromised the pressure seal. God knows what that did to the internal. Just stop touching it. What I'm going to do, Kowski said, his anger returning as a shield for his mistake, is finish my inspection. He grabbed the case. But Evelyn, acting on pure instinct, reached forward to stop him. Don't! Her hand brushed his. Kowski recoiled as if he'd been stung. Don't you touch me! You assault a federal officer? I didn't. That's it! I'm done with this! He was completely rattled. He was in the wrong. He knew it, and the only way out was to double down. This is uncooperative. Your bag is clear. He grabbed the now damaged hard case. He tried to shove it back into her leather tote. But he was clumsy, angry, and his hands were shaking. He missed the opening. The hard case slipped from his grasp. It didn't just fall. He had been shoving it, and his shove gave it momentum. The case flew from his hand, sailed over the edge of the steel table, and crashed onto the hard, unforgiving linoleum tile floor 2 feet below. The sound was not a loud crash. It was a dense, sickening thud, followed by the sharp, crystalline tinkle of something delicate breaking inside. A collective gasp went up from the passengers in line. One of the other agents, a young woman named Chen, put her hand over her mouth. The entire security area was frozen. Mark Kowski stared at the case on the floor. Evelyn Reed stared at the case on the floor. Her eyes, magnified by her glasses, were wide with a kind of sharp, terrible clarity. The blood had drained from her face. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She slowly lifted her gaze from the case and fixed it on Agent Kowski. Her voice, when she spoke, was not loud. It was low, precise, and cut through the silence like a diamond blade. That, she said, was a $2 million prototype. Kowski, who had been breathing heavily, froze, his mouth half open. The blood drained from his face, mirroring hers. What? He whispered. You just destroyed a $2 million piece of proprietary medical technology, Evelyn repeated, her voice gaining a fraction of volume. I am Dr. Evelyn Reed, CEO of Innovatech Dynamics. And you, she said, pointing a single, steady finger at him, are in more trouble than you can possibly comprehend. Kowski looked at the box. He looked at her. He tried to summon his sneer, his bravado. Lady, you can't just say that. It's a box. You're lying. Am I? Evelyn asked. She calmly pulled out her iPhone. I am now recording this interaction. What is your name and badge number, Agent? I don't have to. Supervisor! A different agent, the one named Chen, called out, her voice high with panic. Supervisor Diaz, to secondary, now. Supervisor Diaz was at the checkpoint in under 30 seconds. She was a short, imposing woman in her 50s, with a no-nonsense demeanor that had been stress-tested by decades of airport drama. She took in the scene with a single, sweeping glance. The frozen passengers, her two pale-faced agents, the woman in the hoodie with her phone out, and the black case on the floor. What is this? Diaz demanded. Agent Kowski, what happened? Supervisor, Kowski began, his voice cracking. This passenger. She was uncooperative. She interfered. She had an undeclared item, and it slipped. It was an accident. An accident? Evelyn's voice was like chipping ice. Supervisor, your agent refused to listen to protocol. He verbally harassed me, broke the seal on my equipment case, and then, when I tried to stop him from damaging it further, he threw it on the floor. I did not! Kowski shouted. It fell! Fortunately, Evelyn said, gesturing up. We don't have to guess. That camera, she pointed to the high-definition dome camera directly above the screening table, has a perfect view of this entire table. Supervisor Diaz looked up at the camera. Her expression tightened instantly. She knew. She knew. Agent Kowski, Diaz said, her voice dangerously low. Go to the break room. Now. Do not speak to anyone. But Supervisor, now, Kowski, surrender your badge to Agent Chen. Kowski looked, wildly, from Diaz to Evelyn. The mask of his authority was gone. He was just a terrified, cornered man. He unclipped his badge, his hands shaking so badly he could barely manage it. He thrust it at Chen and stalked off, his face a mask of white-hot rage and primal fear. Ma'am, Diaz said, turning to Evelyn. Her tone was all business. Dr. Reed, you said, please come with me. We'll get your items. She crouched down, but Evelyn put out a hand. Don't touch it, Evelyn said. Get a photographer. I want its position on the floor documented before it's moved. Diaz paused, halfway to the floor. She looked at Evelyn, really looked at her, and the dismissal that had been in Kowski's eyes was replaced by a dawning, horrified comprehension. This was not a Karen. This was a professional. This was real. Of course, Diaz said. Let's move you to a private room. I'll have someone document this immediately. 10 minutes later, Evelyn was in a sterile, windowless office, the kind of room airports use for deportations and VIP security issues. The case sat on the table in front of her. A stoic Port Authority officer had taken photos. Supervisor Diaz was there, as was the head of JFK's TSA, a man named Director Peters, who had been roused from his home and was vibrating with anxiety. Dr. Reed, Peters began, on behalf of the Transportation Security Administration, I want to offer my sincerest. Save it, Evelyn said. She had her document portfolio open. She slid a thick, bound document across the table. This is the insurance binder and transport manifest for the Synapse Corps. As you'll see, it's valued by Lloyd's of London at $2,200,000. That's cost, not valuation. The item's value, she said, her voice wavering for the first time, is incalculable. Peters opened the binder. His eyes widened. It was all there. Schematics, declarations, insurance riders. It was legitimate. "And this," Evelyn said, sliding a second document, "is my invitation to the Global Innovators Summit. I was scheduled to give the keynote presentation in 6 hours. A presentation that was contingent on a live demonstration of the synapse core." "Dr. Reed," Diaz said, is the device, the case is, it's just the case, right? Maybe the item inside is." Evelyn looked at the broken latch and the scuffed corner where the case had impacted the tile. She finally reached out and, with an unsteady hand, pressed the 2 correct pressure release pins. With a pneumatic hiss, the vacuum seal broke. She lifted the lid. Director Peters and Supervisor Diaz leaned in. Inside, suspended in a glowing turquoise gel, was a crystalline lattice that looked like a futuristic snowflake. It was beautiful, intricate, and pulsing with a soft, internal light. And running from the top left quadrant to the bottom right, like a crack in a frozen pond, was a hairline fracture. As they watched, the soft internal light within the lattice flickered, sputtered, and went dark. Evelyn stared at it, the product of 4 years of her life, the work of her entire team, the future of her company. She didn't cry. She simply closed her eyes, took a long, shuddering breath, and then opened them. The ice was back. "Supervisor Diaz, Director Peters," she said, her voice flat. "You need to call your legal department, and the Department of Homeland Security. And I," she said, pulling out her phone, "am calling my lawyers." She dialed. "David, wake up. It's Evelyn. We have a situation at JFK. Get the litigation team on a conference call in 10 minutes. And call Julian Vance. Wake him up. Tell him the demo is off. Tell him the core is gone." The name Julian Vance landed in the room with the thud of a gold bar. Director Peters knew the name. Everyone in finance or tech knew Vance. He was the founder of Titan Ventures, a man who didn't just invest in companies, he consumed them. He was Evelyn's primary and most ruthless investor. Evelyn's call set off a chain reaction that moved at the speed of light and money. While she was still in the sterile room at JFK, her lawyer, David Chen, was on the phone with the Port Authority's general counsel. The tone was not one of negotiation, it was one of damage reporting. In San Francisco, 3 time zones earlier, Julian Vance's phone rang him out of a dead sleep. He listened for 30 seconds, his expression unmoving. "Is it salvageable?" he asked, his voice a gravelly rasp. "I don't know yet." Evelyn's voice came over the speaker. "The lattice is fractured. It's dark, Julian." "A TSA agent," Vance said. Not a question, a statement of disbelief. A 19-an-hour moron." He was silent. "The demo is in." He checked his watch. 5 hours. Our Series B funding is contingent on that demo. "Do you understand what you're telling me, Evelyn? You're not telling me about a 2-matter prototype. You're telling me about a $50 million funding round that's about to go up in smoke." "I understand," Evelyn said, her voice tight. "I'm on the next flight out. I'll see what I can do from the stage. A presentation, the data—" "No," Vance said, cutting her off. "No demo, no keynote. You don't get on that stage and announce a failure. You're a no-show. We'll say it was a medical emergency. Now get back to your lab. Find out if you can build another one." He hung up. Evelyn sat back, the phone feeling heavy in her hand. A medical emergency. The irony was bitter. Across the airport, in the fluorescent-lit TSA break room, Mark Kowski was pacing. He had been debriefed by a stony-faced Supervisor Diaz, who had taken his official statement. He had, on the advice of his union rep, who he'd called in a panic, stuck to the story. It slipped. She was distracting me. He was now on mandatory, unpaid administrative leave, pending a full investigation. He sat, his head in his hands. $2 million. It was a joke. It was a number so large it was abstract. It couldn't be real. It was a scam. This woman, this black woman in her college sweatshirt, was trying to pull a fast one. She was probably some hustler who, his brain snagged. CEO of Innovatech Dynamics. He'd heard that. His fingers still shaking, pulled out his own phone. He typed Innovatech Dynamics into Google. His blood ran cold. The first hit was a Forbes article. The Woman Building the Future. Dr. Evelyn Reed's 9-figure quest to merge man and machine. There she was. Not in a hoodie, but in a sharp, dark blue dress, standing in a clean room, holding a glowing, crystalline object. He read the article. He saw the investors. Titan Ventures, Julian Vance. He saw the valuation from their last funding round. $350 million. Kowski felt the floor drop out from under him. This wasn't a scam. It wasn't an exaggeration. It was real. He hadn't just dropped a box. He had, in a fit of petty, prejudiced rage, thrown a rock at a skyscraper, and he was about to be crushed by the debris. Mark, his wife, Sarah, answered his call on the third ring, her voice thick with sleep. "What's wrong? You're not home." I messed up, Sarah," he whispered, the false anger gone, replaced by a hollow terror. "At work. I think I'm going to be fired." "Fired? What did you do?" "Mark, we can't. With Timmy's hospital bills, we can't." I broke something," he said. It was an accident. But as the word accident left his mouth, the image from the CCTV camera flashed in his mind. The sneer, the shove, the throw. There was no hiding. He had done it. Back in the private office, Evelyn was finishing her own calls. She had rebooked a flight, not to San Francisco but back to her lab in Boston. Her chief engineer, a brilliant, perpetually stressed man named Ben Carter, was already spinning up the clean room. "Director Peters," she said, standing up, "my legal team will be sending you a formal notice of claim by noon today. You will preserve all video evidence, including from camera L12, pointed at secondary screening, Bay 4. You will provide me with the full name and service record of Agent Mark Kowski. My team will handle the prototype. We will be billing your agency for its full replacement cost of $2.2 million, plus damages. Do you understand?" Peters, a man used to dealing with irate travelers, could only nod. He was completely, hopelessly out of his depth. Evelyn picked up the tote bag. She left the broken synapse core on the table, still in its open case. "That is now evidence," she said. "Do not move it." She walked out of the room, past the checkpoint, which was now fully staffed by new, wide-awake and terrified-looking agents, and toward the gate for her flight to Boston. She hadn't slept in 24 hours. She felt like she'd aged a decade. The adrenaline was gone, leaving behind a cold, desolate certainty. This was an extinction-level event for her company. Julian Vance wasn't just an investor. He was a predator. He smelled blood in the water. Her blood. He hadn't said, "We'll get through this." He had said, "Fix this." And if she couldn't, he would pull his funding, invoke the default clauses in their contract, and sell Innovatech for parts. And it had all happened because a man in a blue shirt didn't like her hoodie. The next 48 hours were a blur of damage control. The Global Innovators Summit opened with a brief, awkward announcement that Dr. Evelyn Reed, the keynote speaker, was unable to attend due to a sudden medical emergency. The whispers started immediately. In the tech world, a last-minute cancellation by a CEO on the verge of a major funding round was a massive red flag. Had she faked the tech? Was the company insolvent? Rival CEOs and venture capitalists circled like sharks. Julian Vance, who was attending the summit, fanned the flames with his silence, his face a granite mask of no comment. In Boston, Evelyn and her team were in the clean room, performing a post-mortem on the synapse core. The news was bad. The hairline fracture had shattered the primary quantum emitter. The biological substrate was contaminated. It wasn't just broken. It was a total loss. "Ben," Evelyn said, her voice echoing slightly inside her cleanroom suit. "What's the build time on a new core?" Ben Carter ran a hand over his tired face. "The lattice. We can grow in 3 weeks. But the emitter, the rare earth elements have to be hand-sorted. The quantum entanglement takes 12 days in the accelerator. Best case, 6 months. And that's if we had the $2.2 million in capital right now to buy the raw materials." 6 months. They didn't have 6 days. Their operating capital was set to run out in 90 days. The Series B funding was everything. Meanwhile, the TSA's internal investigation was moving with terrifying speed. Director Peters had pulled the CCTV footage from camera L12. He watched it in his office. Alone. He winced. It was exactly as Dr. Reed had described. It was worse. The video had no audio, but the body language was damning. Kowski's aggressive posture, his sneer clearly visible. The way he slapped the belt, the way he broke the latch with sheer, angry force. And the end, it wasn't a slip, it wasn't a drop. He had tried to shove it, gotten frustrated, and flung it. It was a clear, undeniable act of gross negligence, fueled by what was transparently personal animus. Peters picked up his phone. "Get legal, and get me the file on Agent Mark Kowski." Kowski was at his small, cluttered apartment, ignoring the ringing phone. He was on his laptop, obsessively scrolling through tech news sites. Innovatech CEO bails on summit. Titan Ventures rumored to be re-evaluating. "They're fine," he muttered to himself, rocking back and forth. "They're billionaires. It's just money to them. They're trying to ruin me over a broken toy." But his bravado was a thin sheet of ice. He knew what was coming. The union rep had called him. "Mark," the rep, a man named Henderson, had said, "the video is bad. Really bad. They're not talking suspension. They're talking termination for cause." "For cause?" Mark choked. "After 20 years, for an accident. They're saying it wasn't. They're saying you were aggressive, you violated protocol, and you intentionally." "That's a lie," Mark roared. "Is it?" Henderson asked, his voice flat. "Look, the best I can do is argue for a retirement package. Let you resign, keep your pension. But if you fight this, Mark, they're going to burn you to the ground." Kowski hung up. "Resign. Give up. Crawl away." After 20 years of being treated like dirt, he was supposed to just disappear? No, this was her fault. That woman, she had provoked him. She had been condescending. He was so lost in his own spiral of rage that he missed the real story. It wasn't happening on TechCrunch. It was happening on YouTube. A passenger, a 19-year-old tech vlogger who went by the name Digital Dave, had been in line right behind Evelyn. He had been quietly filming for his My Trip to SF vlog. He'd started recording when Kowski started shouting. He had captured everything. The audio. The video, uploaded from his hotel room in San Francisco, was shaky. But the sound was crystal clear. Kowski. "Sensitive equipment. What's in there, lady? Your sensitive makeup?" Evelyn. "Sir, it is fragile. Please just let it go through." Kowski. "I'm telling you to follow instructions." The video captured the snap of the latch. It captured Kowski's furious shout. "Step back!" and it captured the thud, the tinkle, and Evelyn's cold, clear words. That was a $2 million prototype. The video was titled, "TSA Agent Throws Black Woman's Bag, Destroys $2 Million Tech." In 24 hours, it had 3 million views. By 48 hours, it had 10 million. It had been picked up by The Shade Room, by TMZ, by Mashable, and was now climbing to the top of the New York Times homepage. The story was no longer about a failed tech demo. It was about a black CEO being harassed, profiled, and having her life's work destroyed by a white TSA agent on a power trip. The Digital Dave video was a nuclear bomb. The TSA, which had been handling the situation as a high-value, internal negligence claim, was suddenly at the center of a national media firestorm. The calls for Kowski's job were deafening. The hashtags @FireMark Kowski and @JusticeFor.to-read were trending globally. Director Peters, under immense pressure from Washington, held an emergency press conference. The actions depicted in this video are unacceptable and do not reflect the standards of the Transportation Security Administration. Agent Mark Kowski has been terminated, effective immediately, for cause. For cause. The two words that Mark Kowski had dreaded. It meant he lost everything. His pension, his benefits, his severance, 20 years of his life, gone. He found out from a push notification on his phone. He was radioactive. His name, his face, now scraped from the video and plastered everywhere, were symbols of petty tyranny and racism. He received thousands of death threats. His address was leaked online. He and his wife had to flee their apartment in the middle of the night. But the karma was only beginning. The legal and financial fallout was just starting to land. Julian Vance called Evelyn. His voice was not angry. It was worse. It was disappointed. "Evelyn," he said, "I'm at the summit. I'm looking at the CEO of Cybercore Dynamics. He's reverse engineering your white papers as we speak. He's telling my partners that you're finished, that your tech was unstable anyway, and that he can deliver a similar product in a year." "He's lying, Julian. The core was stable. It was perfect. It doesn't matter. The narrative is set. Innovatech is a failure. That agent didn't just break a prototype, Evelyn. He broke the company. He broke our deal." "What are you saying?" Evelyn asked, her stomach clenching. "I'm saying Titan Ventures is invoking the material adverse change clause. The loss of the prototype, the failure to demo, and the resulting reputational damage constitutes a catastrophic failure. We're pulling the Series B, effective immediately." Evelyn dropped the phone. Pulled. The funding was gone. They had 90 days of capital. They were, in effect, bankrupt. "And Evelyn," Vance's voice continued from the phone on her desk, "read your contract. With the Series B dissolved, our initial seed loan is now callable. We want our $12 million back. You have 30 days. Click. He was done. He was calling in the loan. He wasn't just abandoning the ship. He was setting it on fire and seizing the lifeboats. He would trigger a bankruptcy, buy up Innovatech's patents, Evelyn's life's work, for pennies on the dollar at auction, and hand them to his new golden boy at Cybercore. Evelyn fell into her chair. She was ruined. Kowski's petty act of spite had triggered a domino effect that had just wiped out her entire company, her dreams, and 4 years of her life. She had beaten the odds, broken barriers, outsmarted the old boys' network, only to be taken down by a jaded airport worker and a $20 piece of Tupperware. She sat in her lab, the lights off, surrounded by the silent, useless husks of her technology. Ben and the team had gone home. She had to tell them in the morning that they were all out of a job. Mark Kowski, meanwhile, was sitting in a cheap motel room 2 states away, watching his life implode on a 24-inch TV. His wife, Sarah, was sitting on the edge of the bed, her suitcase at her feet. "I can't do this, Mark," she said, her voice dead. "I'm taking Timmy to my sister's. The threats, It was an accident!" he screamed, his voice cracking in despair. "Was it?" Sarah asked, standing up. She looked at him, really looked at him, and the man she had married was gone. In his place was a hollow, bitter shell. "You've been this angry for years, Mark. You hated your job. You hated everyone who wasn't you. You hated that doctor because she looked how she looked. You did this. This wasn't an accident. This was you." She picked up her bag. "The house is in foreclosure. We have nothing. My sister she'll help me and Timmy. I'll have my lawyer contact you." "Sarah, no, please." She walked out the door, leaving him alone with the hum of the motel's ice machine and the blare of the TV news, where a pundit was calling him the poster child for systemic bias. He had lost his job. He had lost his pension. He had lost his home. And now he had lost his family. He was, in every sense of the word, a broken man. The hard karma had landed, crushing him completely. Evelyn spent 2 days in the dark. She drafted the email to her staff. She scheduled the call with the bankruptcy lawyers. She was done. On the 3rd day, her phone buzzed. It was an email, not from a lawyer, not from a reporter. The sender was Cassandra Wu, Aperture Ventures. Evelyn's brow furrowed. Aperture. They were the other giant. They were Julian Vance's biggest, richest, and most aggressive rival. The email was short. "Dr. Reed, I saw the video. I've read the coverage. I also read your 2024 paper on neural lattice biocomputation. Julian Vance is a fool, and he's a coward. My partners and I were appalled by what happened. We were also intrigued. The synapse core. Is it as good as your paper claims? I'm in Boston. My car can be at your lab in 20 minutes. Let's talk. CW." A spark. It wasn't much, but it was something. Evelyn stood up. She looked at her reflection in the dark screen of a monitor. She looked like she had at the airport, tired, stressed, but the ice was still there. She typed a one-word reply. "Come." Cassandra Wu was the opposite of Julian Vance. Vance was a sledgehammer. Wu was a stiletto. She walked into the lab, surveyed the powered-down equipment, and nodded. "Hell of a mess," she said, no preamble. "Vance is trying to gut you. He's triggering the callable loan to force a patent auction. Classic Julian." "He'll succeed," Evelyn said, her voice flat. "I'm out of capital. I can't rebuild the core. It's over." "Is it?" Cassandra asked. She walked over to the whiteboard, still covered in Ben's equations. "I don't think so. I think you're angry. And an angry genius is my favorite kind of investment." "What are you proposing?" "Titan Ventures pulled a $50 million round. They valued you at $350. That was before this." "Before this?" Evelyn laughed, a harsh, dry sound. "Before I was exposed as a failure?" "No," Cassandra said, turning to face her. "Before you became the most famous woman in tech. Before every qualified engineer under 30 saw you as a hero. Before every rival company saw Julian Vance as a snake. And before I saw your tech." Cassandra tapped the whiteboard. "This is revolutionary. This isn't a $350 million company, Evelyn. This is a $1 trillion company. You're not building a better processor. You're building the next processor." She pulled out her phone. "Aperture Ventures is prepared to do 2 things. First, we are buying your debt. We'll pay Julian his $12 million tomorrow. He's out, effective immediately." Evelyn's heart stopped. "Second," Cassandra continued, "we're not giving you a Series B. We're skipping that. We're leading a Series C. We are offering $100 million at a $1 billion-dollar valuation. Evelyn physically sat down. She couldn't feel her legs. 100 million. It's a bargain, Cassandra said with a thin smile. We get your brain, your team, and the best PR story of the decade. We're not just investing in the synapse core, we're investing in your resilience. The world watched you get knocked down. Now they're going to watch us help you stand up and win the fight. But the core, it will take 6 months. Then take 6 months, Cassandra said. We're not Julian. We're not flippers. We're builders. You just have one condition. What? The $2.2 million the TSA is going to pay you in the settlement. What about it? Evelyn asked. You're not giving it to the company, Cassandra said. The company doesn't need it. We're funding the new core. That settlement money. I want you to do something loud with it. A slow smile spread across Evelyn's face. The ice was melting, replaced by a controlled, calculated fire. I think, she said, I have just the idea. 1 year later, the stage at the Global Innovators Summit was lit in the signature blue of Innovatech Dynamics. The auditorium was packed. Every seat, every aisle, every inch of standing room was full. The presenter on stage was not a nervous founder. She was a titan. Dr. Evelyn Reed, her hair now styled in sleek, confident lines, dressed in a custom-fit Armani suit, paced the stage. Resilience, she said, her voice commanding the attention of 5,000 people, is not just about survival. It's about adaptation. It's about taking the force of an impact and redirecting it. Behind her, on a screen the size of a building, a live 3D model of the new synapse core glowed. This, she said, is the Phoenix core. It is smaller, faster, and more powerful than its predecessor. And today, for the first time, we are demonstrating it live. She held up her left hand. A small, sleek prosthetic finger, metal and polymer, was attached to her index finger. This is a prototype prosthetic, controlled by a small, external Phoenix core. It is reading my brain's neural signals, the ones telling my finger to move. She thought bend. On the screen and on her hand, the prosthetic finger clenched into a fist. The audience, investors, engineers, doctors, and reporters, rose to their feet in a thunderous, deafening wave of applause. Evelyn smiled. The $100 million investment had not just rebuilt the company, it had supercharged it. Julian Vance had lost his $12 million, been blackballed by Cassandra Wu's network, and was now facing lawsuits from his own partners for losing Innovatech. Cybercore, his backup plan, was mired in R&D hell, unable to replicate Evelyn's genius. Evelyn Reed was on the cover of Wired, Forbes, and Time. She was the new, dominant face of innovation. And Mark Kowski? Karma hadn't finished with him. Fired, unemployable, and divorced, he drifted. His name was a Google punchline. He'd tried working under a different name, but his face was too recognizable. He ended up in a different city, working the night shift, stocking shelves at a 24-hour big box retailer. It was anonymous, grueling, minimum wage work. One night, near the checkout, he saw a magazine rack. And there she was, Dr. Evelyn Reed, on the cover of Forbes. From Ruin to Revolution, the headline read. He stared at her face, calm, powerful, successful, the face he had sneered at, the woman he had tried to break. He thought of his broken-down car, his empty motel room, the ache in his back, and the crushing weight of his son's medical bills, which he could no longer help pay. He had thrown a rock, and the skyscraper had barely noticed, other than to use the incident as a foundation for a new, taller building. He, on the other hand, had been buried by the pebble. Evelyn's presentation was ending. I want to close with one last announcement, she said. A year ago, disruption in my travel plans resulted in a $2.2 million settlement from the US government. Today, I am proud to announce the launch of the Innovatech Resilience Fund. We are donating that full amount, plus a matching donation from Aperture Ventures, to create a $4.4 million scholarship and grant fund. This fund is dedicated exclusively to supporting young women of color and underrepresented minorities pursuing degrees in STEM. The applause was even louder. Evelyn stood at the center of the light. She had won. She hadn't just recovered, she had triumphed, turning an act of prejudice and hate into a legacy of opportunity. As she flew home, first class, she passed through security. A young, polite TSA agent smiled at her. "Dr. Reed, it's an honor. My sister is applying for your scholarship." Evelyn smiled back. "Tell her good luck." She picked up her bag, which now traveled in a case marked with a dozen fragile and biohazard stickers, and was handled by a dedicated airport liaison, and walked toward her plane. She had taken the worst moment of her life and made it her origin story, and that was the hardest, coldest, and sweetest karma of all. For Dr. Evelyn Reed, life had become a series of victories. The success of the Phoenix Core demonstration had shattered every expectation. Innovatech Dynamics, now valued at a staggering $10 billion, was the undisputed leader in neural interface technology. Cassandra Wu and Aperture Ventures had made their investment back tenfold, and Evelyn was no longer just a CEO. She was a visionary, her legacy secured. Her resilience fund was already changing lives, distributing millions to a new generation of engineers and scientists who, like her, had been told they didn't belong. But karma is a patient accountant, and the ledger was not yet closed. There were still two names with a balance outstanding. The first was Julian Vance. 6 months after Evelyn's triumphant return to the Global Innovators Summit, Vance sat in a windowless conference room in Wilmington, Delaware. The air was thick with the expensive, suffocating silence of high-stakes litigation. He was no longer the predator. He was the prey. His own partners at Titan Ventures had sued him. His attempt to trigger the callable loan on Innovatech, they argued, was not a sound financial decision to protect the firm. It was a bad faith act of personal ego. He had tried to cannibalize a promising asset, one their firm was also invested in, to personally acquire its patents at a bankruptcy auction. He had bet against his own company, and he had lost. "The board's findings are unanimous, Julian," said a man named Marcus Thorne, who had once been his protégé and was now the firm's new managing partner. "Your actions constituted a catastrophic breach of fiduciary duty. You exposed this firm to unacceptable risk and reputational damage." "I built this firm," Julian snarled, his voice a dry rasp. "You have no right." "You had a right," Marcus corrected, his voice as cold as a bank vault. "And you violated it." He slid a single document across the polished mahogany table. It was a separation agreement. "This is not a negotiation," Marcus said. "You will sign this. You will forfeit your entire stake in Titan Ventures to cover the damages and legal fees from the partner lawsuits. In return, the firm will not pursue criminal charges for fraud." Julian Vance stared at the paper. His life's work, his name, his legacy. He was being bought out of his own company for $1. He was being erased. His reputation on the street, which had been built on ruthless, visionary plays, was now rewritten. He wasn't a shark, he was just a clumsy butcher who had poisoned his own well. His hand, the one that had hung up on Evelyn in her moment of crisis, was shaking so badly he could barely hold the pen. He signed. He had lost his money, he had lost his company, and he had lost his name. In the world of high finance, he no longer existed. The karma was precise. He who lived by the predatory clause died by the predatory clause. The final name on the ledger was Mark Kowski. Kowski had drifted. He was now in a different state, a different city, a ghost in his own life. His name, permanently stained in the digital world, had made him unemployable in any job that required a background check. He worked nights, for cash, unloading trucks at a wholesale distribution center. It was brutal, anonymous work. He was sitting in a small, fluorescent-lit public library, using one of their free computers. He was thinner, grayer, and his eyes were permanently fixed in the defeated stare of a man who had accepted his own ruin. He was searching for low-income health resources. His ex-wife, Sarah, had called him, crying. Their son, Timmy, had suffered a severe asthma attack. The bills were piling up, and her sister's insurance couldn't cover the specialist he needed. Kowski typed, "Free pediatric asthma clinic," into the search bar. A link popped up. JFK Port Authority and City of Boston announce new partnership for low-income families. His heart hammered in his chest. He clicked it. The article was from 2 weeks ago. It announced the grand opening of the Innovatech Resilience Clinic for pediatric respiratory illness. It was a state-of-the-art facility, funded entirely by a multi-million-dollar donation from Dr. Evelyn Reed and her company. The article read, "The clinic, funded by the historic $2.2 million settlement Dr. Reed won from the TSA, provides free, world-class care to the children of low-income families." This fund was born from a moment of crisis. Dr. Reed was quoted as saying, "And it is our privilege to turn that moment into a lifetime of support for families in need." There was a photo. Evelyn, smiling, cutting a blue ribbon alongside the mayor. She looked powerful, serene, and happy. Kowski stared at the screen. The woman he had tried to humiliate, the woman whose life's work he had, in a fit of bitter rage, thrown to the floor. She was now, from 1,000 miles away, the only person on earth offering to save his son's life, for free. He could apply. He could fill out the form, swallow what was left of his pride, and beg for the charity of the woman he had wronged. But he couldn't. He couldn't even lift his hands to the keyboard. His shame was a physical weight, pinning him to the chair. He had lost his job, his pension, his home, and his family. But this was the final, devastating stroke of karma. It wasn't just that he was ruined and she was successful. It was that her success, born directly from his failure, had become a monument to her grace, a grace that was now his only hope, and one he was too broken to even ask for. He closed the browser, a completely and utterly defeated man, and walked back out into the cold. The ledger was paid in full, and that's how a single, hateful moment of prejudice backfired into one of the biggest success stories in tech. Agent Kowski didn't just lose his job, he lost his home, his family, and his future, buried by the consequences of his own bigotry. And Dr. Evelyn Reed? She didn't just get revenge. She got richer. She got stronger. And she used the very money from her settlement to build a ladder for others just like her. What did you think of Kowski's karma? Was it too much, or was it exactly what he deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. This story is a powerful reminder that the person you look down on today might just be the one signing your paycheck or your termination slip tomorrow. If you loved this story of drama and hard karma, do me a favor and hit that like button. Share this video with a friend who needs to hear it, and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell. I post new stories of real-life karma every week, and you don't want to miss what's coming next.